a gospel tune. Beneath the weight of a blood-red moon, justice sleeps in southern dust, but bones remember what lies can't hurt.
Hello, and welcome to Make It Make Sense, Alabama. If it affects people's rights, safety, or the ability to advocate for themselves in Alabama, we believe that it deserves an explanation. And that's exactly what our podcast is here to do. I'm Whitney Skopecki, and here with me today is my partner, Neely Faulkner. We're focused on accountability, justice, and vivid understanding across the state. Each of our episodes breaks down complex issues in plain language using public records, personal interviews, and verified information.
And today's guest is Brent Woodall. He's a Republican candidate for the Alabama Public Service Commission. Hot topic here. Woodall is based in Tuscumbia and brings a mix of legal, political, and regulatory experience to the race. He previously served as chief of staff at the Alabama Public Service Commission, giving him direct insight into how the agency operates and how decisions are made. In his legal career, Woodall has worked as a prosecutor with both the Alabama Attorney General's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Alabama. He also has a background in Republican Party leadership, including roles at the county and state level, and serving as a delegate to the 2016 Republican National Convention for President Trump. His campaign for Public Service Commission centers on utility regulation and ratepayer advocacy, including a focus on redirecting certain excess utility funds back to customers rather than the state's general fund. So thank you, Brent, for joining us. For listeners who are unaware, we had some technical difficulties this morning, but Brent was very, very apt to rescheduling with us quickly. So thank you so much for doing that and interviewing with us so that people can learn about your campaign for the PSC.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
So let's talk about you for a second. You know, your bio kind of tells people a little bit about you, but is there anything that we didn't mention in your bio or something that you think voters should know about you?
Well, other than the fact that I've been married for 37 years to a fantastic wife. I have 2 children, Hannah Grace and Daniel, and staying busy on the road these days, as you can imagine.
I'm sure.
Hey, people don't talk about this enough, really, but being married for a long period of time nowadays is quite a feat. I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
not a lot of people get there. I want to say this for the record. My grandparents were married for over 70 years. So that
Good.
was pretty cool.
Well, I hope to get there myself someday, I can assure you.
you got a ways to go, but you're getting on up there. We said earlier the PSC is definitely a hot topic. And it seems like you're pretty well versed in the PSC, having served as chief of staff. So can you tell us what that means in practical terms? Like, what do you actually do as a chief of staff, and do you think that makes you a little more experienced or qualified for the position than maybe others in the race?
Sure, I'm 100% convinced it makes me more qualified than the others in the race, because I have been there at the Public Service Commission. And then to further answer your question about what you do as the chief of staff, I'll let you in on a little secret. And some of that is coming out in the last few months regarding what takes place at the Public Service Commission. And surprise, surprise, it turns out the commissioners don't really do a whole lot there. So it's really incumbent upon the chief of staff to work with the merit system employees who are at the PSC, who are overseeing the utility companies, looking at their records, coming up with a plan, maybe recommendation for the commissioner's office, but then also working with the utility companies themselves and finding out what their input is into each proposal that they may have or any plan that they may have for a long-term solution to something. And so it was based on that experience that I realize now that I am, without a doubt, the most qualified person in the race for Public Service Commission Place 2.
And there's only 2 places, right? I think we said this earlier, let me just not here, but in a previous interview that we did, there's only 2 places, I guess, but you represent people from throughout the entire state. It's not separated by district.
Would it be 3 technically?
Exactly. There are three technically, because there are two that are on the ballot this time. Place one and place two. Then there is also the position of president that is not on the ballot this time. But every seat at the Public Service Commission is currently statewide. Now, things that are taking place in the legislature are aimed at changing that. But right now, I mean, you people from Muscle Shoals to Mobile and Decatur to Daphne and all points in between vote on all three seats at the PSC.
I like that
Mhm.
term, muscle shoals to Mobile and Decatur to Daphne. I'm gonna have to use that.
Maybe I'll say Decatur to Dothan to take in Southeast Alabama a little more.
Speaking of changes that are happening in the PSC, are we comfortable talking
Mm.
about that and the scandal, I guess, is how I'm going to call it, that's going on
It's
today
what
at
it
the
feels like
legislature?
to me. It feels like a scandal.
And it should. It's amazing what
Yeah.
they're doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, may I talk about that for just a minute?
Yeah,
Please.
absolutely.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
follow it
Right.
very closely.
Yes, fine. Well, it started back in, I think it was November, when Jennifer Horton with WBRC in Birmingham did some reports on the Public Service Commission. One of her reports established that Alabama has the third highest electricity rates in the entire country. And people were shocked to hear that, although with some of the checks they've been writing over the last few months, maybe they weren't that shocked. But there was a genuine reaction in Alabama that these rates are excessive, that there's no way to justify these rates, and people were upset for a reason. The day after that story ran, it's my understanding that a representative from the biggest utility company in Alabama that provides electricity and that is regulated by the Public Service Commission went to Montgomery, and they had a proposal. And the proposal was not to lower the rates, but it was to freeze them for 2 years. And the Public Service Commissioners did what you would expect them to do, actually, if you know anything about how they operate. And they just rubber stamped that proposal, locking those incredibly high electricity rates in place for an additional 2 years. Again, there was outrage over that. There's this issue of a solar farm down in the Mobile County area that y'all are familiar with, and people got upset. People in the legislature decided that they were going to look and see what they could do about this. The PSC is a creation of the legislature, so that body can do things with the Public Service Commission and make changes. But it's when they started making those changes that they caused more problems than they needed to. I'll tell you right now, the only thing that needs to happen in the state of Alabama to fix what is wrong at the Public Service Commission is for the people of this state to put 2 new people at the PSC this year. Once that happens, the 2 new people can say, we're really going to surprise people, and we're going to work when we get there. And we're going to come up with solutions to these problems, and we're going to hold people accountable. That's all that needs to happen. But the people in the legislature decided they were going to do something. One proposal, you may recall, was, I think the earliest one was just to simply say, we're going to have these seats to be appointed by the governor. I would like to remind people, all 3 commissioners at the Public Service Commission were originally appointed by the governor. So far, only one out of the 3 has stood for election. But if you think that appointed commissioners would be a good idea, just recall that 2 of them who haven't stood for election rubber stamp what came from the utilities. And so there was a genuine outcry about that, taking the ability to vote away from people. It made it out of the House, but that bit of legislation did not make it through the Senate. Well, the Senate then announced a bill, and it was straight out of the Democrat Party's playbook. They called it power to the people, when actually it took power from the people. And it reminded me of the Affordable Health Care Act that made health care unaffordable in the country. The Build Back Better plan that didn't build anything back, and if it had, it wouldn't have been better. I mean, they named it something that it did not do to make it sound good to the people. But then when you got into the actual bill, you found that it didn't give you power. It took power from the people. I mentioned now that, or mentioned the way it is now, that people all over the state get to vote for every single commissioner at the Public Service Commission. But under that bill, it would not have happened. First of all, the governor in July of this year, of 2026, and think about this. Let's say the people of Alabama go out on May the 19th, they do the right thing, and they say, we're going to put 2 new people at the Public Service Commission to change what's wrong there. In July, if the Senate bill had gone through, the governor was going to appoint 4 brand new people to brand new positions that the bill would have created at the PSC. Who do you think's going to tell her who to appoint? The same people who told her to appoint the 2 she's already appointed. And let me tell you this, the person who was at the Public Service Commission, place 2C, had no experience whatsoever at the PSC before he was appointed by the governor. His daddy had been the commissioner. And one day his daddy announced, I'm resigning, turned a letter over to the governor. She signs a piece of paper accepting that letter. And from what I can tell, before she put her pen down, signed another piece of paper appointing his son. There was no search for someone who was qualified, no search for someone who had the right agenda of what a commissioner should do. No search for someone who had the right work ethic. It was just who has the right name. That individual was put there. Well, if that Senate bill had gone through, the governor was going to appoint 4 people, and it would have been done in pretty much the same way that one was done. And those 4 would have been able to have canceled everything the 2 new commissioners and the president would have been able to have done. There's a reason for that. Something else that changed, taking power from the people, is, guess what? Instead of, again, it being statewide, this was going to have commissioners running according to congressional seats. And I don't mind telling you, the challenger to the incumbent in place 1 and I, place 2, live in the same congressional district, along with another the president of the Public Service Commission. We all live in the same district. So that would have automatically have eliminated 2 of us from ever having been elected to that position once they actually got around to allowing you to vote for the people in those slots again. There were other things that were incredibly wrong with that bill. And I encouraged everybody I could. I know other people did around the state, and that bill never made it out of the House. Mac Butler in the House came up with a good solution that did not change your ability to vote for anybody at the Public Service Commission. It didn't grow the Public Service Commission. And let me say on that right there, I'm a very conservative person. One thing that I realize is you don't fix a problem caused by the government by expanding the government. And that just makes sense. But yet the people in Montgomery, they're sometimes they're disconnected with common sense. But Mac Butler came out with a bill that said simply, hey, I tell you what, we're going to require that the Public Service Commission have public hearings on a regular basis. That is something that has not been done at the Public Service Commission in decades. That would be a setting where people from the utilities would come in, testimony would be taken, evidence would be presented, would be reviewed. It would be open. It would be transparent to the people of Alabama. But that is something that, guess what? The big utilities don't like that, and they don't want that. But his bill came out of the House unanimously, and we've been waiting to see what the Senate would do. They waited until today, the first day back from spring break. And what did they come up with? They decided to take that part of Mac Butler's bill and combine it with all the bad. The bill I mentioned from the Senate was SB 360. They took all the bad from SB 360, still call it power to the people, and have now apparently rushed it out of this committee, and they are trying to get something done. And I'm just telling you, there is an unbelievable mad dash in Montgomery to get this legislation through. So I haven't had time today, but I will be on the phone with my state representative and another state representative. I've already been in touch with Mac Butler, encouraging them to stick by their guns. My state senator let me know that when I contacted him about the first introduction of the Power to the People bill and told him my position, he let me know that if I just need to have him explain it. If he would just explain it, I'd probably like this. And sent me, believe it or not, an article from Politico to sell it to me. And one of the sales points that he had, I think, trying to figure out what he was saying in Politico, the article in Politico was how 2 Democrats got elected in Georgia to their version of the Public Service Commission. And my response back is, Senator, when you elect people by congressional delegation or congressional districts in Alabama, you're going to put 2 Democrats on the PSC here in Alabama. But there was so much wrong with that bill, and they've incorporated it in this new manifestation of what they're trying to do. But again, I would just ask everybody to get on the phone with their state representative and any representative they know and encourage them to kill this thing and kill it quickly.
Whitney and
Now,
I
will it
met.
be? Sorry, I just wanted to know because I haven't looked it up yet. We were out when we abandoned ship earlier because of our internet woes, but I saw what was happening. Is it going to be introduced, this combined bill? Will it be Senate or House?
Well, it's coming out of the Senate. The
Okay.
hearing today was in the Senate. After the House passed, what was it, HB 475, it was up to the Senate to do something with it, because the House, my understanding, is pretty much saying we're not going to touch SB 360. And so the Senate got it, put it in this committee, and they, like I said, they've taken, it's like Frankenstein's monster, really. I mean, they took the good from HB 475, the House bill, and all the bad from the Senate bill and combined it. And they're trying to get people, they're really, they think, I guess we're just dumb enough to believe that this is going to be good for us when it's the exact opposite.
I think for me, Brent, like the double down, trying to maintain control of the PSC, I think, is what really should alarm people in Alabama. Like I don't think I've seen another piece of legislation come through about a singular topic that they've just tried so hard to maintain control of. I mean, even hiding, bills that take away our rights as voters of the common people, labeled as the People's Rights Bill. I mean, I'm just seeing a lot of crazy stuff with this, and
Right.
it's alarming.
But Whitney, I mean this. I don't know how else to look at other than this is how Democrats play games. I mean, it really is. And I thought more of our Republicans in Montgomery than what I am seeing. I mean, when my state senator, told me if I could just explain this, you'd probably like it. I mean, he
No.
thinks, come on. Maybe I could explain it to him, but. And one of the other things that it did, it created this position of Secretary of Energy, which we've never had in Alabama. And guess what? We really don't need it in Alabama. But
it's just another means of control.
And Whitney, the thing about it, it gave the secretary so much control of the Public Service Commission, because you'd almost say it's complete control. They had complete control over the agenda unless a supermajority of 5 out of the 7 members at the Public Service Commission voted to override and put something else on the agenda. Well, once you have these 4 who are appointed by the governor,
that's the majority.
Right, exactly. And they know what they're supposed to do. Or if they were there, they would know what they were supposed to do and how they're supposed to respond. And I mean, it would be over at that point. I mean, the chance of the average voter changing what's at the Public Service Commission in a positive sense for years to come would be gone.
And let's just be real here for a second. Let's be real here for a second, because I'm getting this from you, Brent, is that you're not afraid to call out the BS. Okay, so something that Whitney and I, when we had our internet woes earlier, we went and met at Waffle House. And it's a funny backstory about Waffle House, but just know, like, that's our second headquarters. Okay. We always be at the Waffle House. And so we're sitting at Waffle House and we're talking about the PSC, and she kind of saw like a post of like the crazy stuff that is happening like today on the Hill about the PSC. And our question is like, why? Why do we have people that are trying so hard to get their hands on the PSC? And what it boils down to is when you track campaign finances. So it's really interesting when you look at the campaign finances of people who are sponsoring these bills, and they see who are inadvertently, getting donations from Alabama Power Pack. And I mean, they can't get donations directly from it, but they can get donations from other super PACs that Alabama Power Pack donates to, and they do. And we've actually been very vocal about that on some of our pages. So that's a question about, okay, why people say, "Oh, well, they just want to, they just want it to be appointed. They don't want this mess of elections and blah blah blah." No, no, there's something else that's in there, and what it boils back down to is the finances. You always follow the money. So I just feel like that needs to be very clear to voters when we're looking at this, not just for people that are, candidates for the PSC, but people that are running for elections in their district, and to look at their campaign finances and see who they are accepting donations from, because ultimately this is going to affect everyone, not just with power bills, but in every other thing that the PSC looks over as far as utilities. We talked about this whole thing in Stockton. That was something that Whitney really followed very closely, was the solar farm in Stockton. I was actually at a meeting that Whitney attended where it was a candidate meet and greet, and she attempted to address one of the, I think he was a sponsor of the bill. I don't know, but she attempted to ask him questions about it, and he just dodged questions,
And
about
I let
the
him know that
solar
he was
farm.
dodging the question.
Yes.
What'd you say,
And
Whitney?
Well, it was so it's, Senator Chris Elliott, he we're very public about our friendship with one another or lack of, but it was basically he had come out because it's election season, and Stockton, it's right here, not in the heart of Baldwin County, but it's a part of Baldwin County, a large part, and the people are upset. It was like every elected official, even if they didn't touch the solar farm, they all wanted in on the conversation. But at the same time, Chris Elliott had just proposed, I think it was SB 71, don't quote me. He was a sponsor for that, or he had voted yes on that bill, and it was right on the heels of what we just saw happen at the waters of the United States. In terms of like they are really loosening federal regulations. I'm a pattern follower, right? And I'm like, what's going on? Data centers, solar farms. Now we've got the federal government pulling back and loosening restrictions on land use. And like this all seems really it's scary. I think for me, when I look at what's happening with the PSC, it's not just a money grab, which, to Neely's point, is a huge piece of it, but like I'm a little bit scared for what's to come, and not to fear monger, but like there is a real, it just feels like there is a lot at stake for a lot of really powerful entities. And I want to understand the why. Like it's big, it
Right,
feels
right,
big.
right. And it is big. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
love to know how much money is going through Montgomery right now to try to get this bill passed. It's got to be incredible. And to be
give us a
able
little time, we can figure it out.
to call the governor up and say, "This is who we want you to put on the Public Service Commission," and not even have a process by which you can say, "Hey, here's how you can apply. Here's how we're going to, verify that you're qualified," anything like that, and just to say, "Yep, that's what I'll do." To show up in Montgomery with a piece of paper saying, "Hey, freeze these rates for 2 years," and have them do the little lapdog thing and go, "Yes, sir, that's what we'll do." But and one of the things I mentioned this earlier about one of those the bill from Representative Butler about how it would cause the Public Service Commission to have public hearings. That is something, again, that has not happened in decades in Alabama. The thing that would come out at a public hearing, which I'm just telling you, I would love to have a public hearing. I'm a trial lawyer, and the idea of sitting there being able to question people under oath and take pieces of evidence in and talk about that and the importance of those evidence or the importance of that evidence would just be a blast.
Agreed.
There is a tremendous fear, I think, of not only companies losing the profit margins they have now, but also of people in the state finding out just how much money's being made. And that,
Well, I think that's it. I'm just going to say at the end of all of this, if any type of fraud is to come out, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not alleging, I'm not accusing, but I wouldn't be shocked.
right. I mean, the power they have, and I'll just remind you, they are known as the power company, not the electricity company. And there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've seen this this Facebook group. I refer back to this Facebook group because it just cracks me up all the time. But it's people that like literally started a group about Alabama power corruption.
I knew
Yes,
the page, Facebook page you were going to talk about. Yes,
I
ma'am.
love that one.
Okay, well, I'm kind of laughing at it, but I'm going to pull it up now. So it started not long ago. Okay, it has 77,000 members in this group, and some of these people that are posting in this group actually know their stuff. Okay, they're actively showing where some of these campaign finances are going. Some of the people that are supporting these, we're talking about lobbyists. We're talking about lobbyists that are, married to delegates within certain districts. It's really interesting to see the number of people that are outraged about this, but guess what? It's not enough people. Everyone should be outraged by what is happening with Alabama Power, with the power grab in Montgomery for the PSC, trying to take your voting rights away about this, trying to appoint people to the board. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I feel like nobody's just being real plain talk about it. So I'm really glad that you're here to be plain talk about it because this is some BS if we're being honest.
And neither, I don't know how else to be. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was there at the Public Service Commission, there was one or two reports that came out that said, fourth highest, third highest, or whatever in the nation. And there was at least one commissioner who would always respond to those reports. And the response was always, well, it gets hot in Alabama. I mean, and I'm not joking.
No.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It gets hot in Alabama. Well, it gets hot in Georgia. It gets hot in Mississippi. It gets hot in Florida. But they had that knee-jerk reaction, and it was a canned line that they presented every time that something, came out like that. And you mentioned that Facebook page. It brought to mind something else that has come out over the last few months. And I cannot believe that the power company allowed this to happen. I guess they just weren't thinking, but somebody representing the power company called one of these environmental groups. And
I heard the audio.
And the person on the other line was smart enough after, I don't know, a minute or two to think, maybe I'm being set up, and hit a record button. But when I listened to that, I was reminded of professional wrestlers, because the representative from the power company is saying, here's how we'll do this. You can introduce it, we'll be opposed to it, or we'll introduce it and you'll be opposed to it. And they were trying to coordinate, the perception that the public would have on this by just how they were going to role play. And people ought to be just tired of this.
But people have forgotten about it, Brent. Like, that was like, it's so relevant to the conversation today. But people, that's the thing, is like, people hear these things, they get outraged for 5 minutes, and then it's on to the next thing. Like, that is completely relevant to what we're seeing happen right now.
Right. But it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going. And again, the only thing that really needs to happen is the people of Alabama need to exercise the right that they still have and put two new people in Montgomery on May the 9th.
Kid you not, there have been so many elections that I have voted in that I simply went in and voted for someone who wasn't an incumbent.
Right.
I didn't care what party they were affiliated with. None of that mattered. It was the fact that they weren't an incumbent, because I think we get too lax in realizing that, like, hey, we're not in a great position now. And if we just keep voting the same people in, then guess what? We're going to have the same outcomes that we've continued to have forever and ever. And it just continuously
But I
gets
think,
worse.
though, too, to that point, Ely, I agree with you. Like, if you're just going along to get along, we need these people out of there. But I think, too, what's really frightening as an Alabamian, and this is happening across the country in different, select races and seats that are being held, but it's the fact that our government is choosing to go to these appointed roles. Like, we might not have that luxury. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally taking away our rights to have a say in something that affects our lives every day.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what you were talking about reminded me so much of the old saying, one definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's one of the things that has gone on specifically with the Public Service Commission. Going back to the public hearings, I've had one person who's contacted me on Facebook and asked me a few questions. I've responded over the messenger, the way of communicating by Facebook. And I have not said that I am personally going to, when I'm elected there, the first thing I'm going to do is call for public hearings. And I'll tell you why. I think there are things that can be done early on, even without public hearings, to address rates, to get some rates down for people, to bring about some positive change. And if you call for a public hearing and it's set 6 months out, you may be losing some time. And I would rather go in, sit down with the merit system employees who are there and have them tell me what can be done in short order to get things done.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I mean, because you're right. You don't want to be sitting there and letting Alabama Power do what they're doing. Already in motion. I agree with you, but public hearings, I think, are what people really want to see.
Right. And again, if Mac Butler's bill makes it out of the legislature, that's something that would have to happen, because
Mhm.
again, the legislature controls the PSC. They create, it started back as a railroad commission back in the 1800s, and it's kind of morphed over the years into what it is now. But all of that has been done by the legislature because they made it.
My
It's like
blood
we could
pressure
just
is
talk
so
about it
high
all
right now.
day.
My blood pressure is so high. Truly, people are not mad enough. I mean, this is not a joke. Like, I'm being so for real right now when I say this. People are really not mad enough. And what are the ways to fix that, right? Like, without burning the cities down, is to put some new people in there and to hold the people that are making these decisions and, actively participating in this corruption, because that's what it is, to hold them accountable, to start talking about it, to start sharing these conversations, and to realize, like, hey, these things are happening. And not only are they, it's not like you're just kind of looking at it from afar, right? At this point, it's affecting your pocket, and like in a
Right.
big way. Think about what do you pay every month that costs you probably some of the most amount of money that you pay, aside from like your mortgage or something. Lo and behold,
Utilities are there.
utility bills. Yep, absolutely.
And,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that even though the PSC doesn't regulate all utilities in the state, they only regulate. Hey, do y'all want to hear the way the PSC says it, or do you want to hear the way we say it on the streets? Come on, say
Both.
the way the PSC does. It's more fun, I can promise you.
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right, because when I was there, one of the things that I learned was the commissioners, in trying to keep people from knowing what they do, came up with the way to describe the companies that they regulate. And they would say, we regulate for-profit companies that operate in certain geographical areas without competition. Some lawyer got paid a whole lot of money, I guarantee you, to come up with that, because the simple word is
Fancy.
monopoly, right? They regulate monopolies. That's who
But
they.
they're not regulating anything.
No, that's true. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But they don't regulate like municipally owned companies. They don't regulate co-ops. They don't touch TVA, of course. But they are, and Whitney, I'll just say it this way: they are supposed to regulate monopolies. But what we have seen over the last few months is what has been known in Montgomery for some time. It's the companies that tell the commissioners what to do, rather than the commissioners that say, this is how this is going to be done. This is what we expect of you. When the regulated company goes to Montgomery and says, here, freeze our rates for 2 years, and they just go, that is the tail wagging the dog. That is the problem at the PSC in a nutshell.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you that, right? Like, who benefits from the system as it stands today? Because right now it doesn't seem like it's us.
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
It's
ratepayers.
not.
It doesn't seem like it's us.
Right. And really, until we had transparency there, it would be hard to see exactly how much people who are being harmed to what degree they're paying that maybe they shouldn't, or not maybe, but that they shouldn't be paying. But we've got to get transparency there. We've got to have questions that are asked and answered.
So what
So
does this
how's
look
your
like?
election going? Sorry, I just wanted to know how your election is going, or your campaign. How is your campaign going right now as you're making your way through Alabama?
I'm making my way all over Alabama, and I'll tell you, being in the northwest corner, that means I got to do a whole lot of driving. And
Yeah.
but one of the funny things is that when I go somewhere, like Neely the other day, you came up to me down in Foley, but I'm having more people come up and saying, can you come talk to my group? Can you come speak to my organization? And I'm trying to get everywhere I can, but you just can't get everywhere. It's difficult. I actually retired from the state last year. There's a wonderful rule that says when you hit 60, if you got enough time with the state, you can retire. And so I retired, but I still work part-time at a local district attorney's office here in Northwest Alabama. They've been real good about being flexible with my hours, but usually it's Wednesdays and Thursdays. And so what I've tried to do is Mondays and Tuesdays be wherever I can be in Alabama. Then on Thursday, have an event within a reasonable drive distance, and then Saturday morning hit a breakfast. But it does get rough after a while, but it's fun too. I love going out and talking because people, I mean, once they found out what was going on at the Public Service Commission, they have questions they want answered. And I'll tell you this right now, I challenge you, find the I'll use this word loosely, incumbent. I'll tell you what, I'll call him Commissioner Nepotism, the guy in the place 2 seat right now. Find him at an event somewhere and ask him questions because I haven't seen him anywhere. And I've not heard of him
they're
going
scared. They're scared to be out here in these streets.
I'll tell you this, Brent, of every incumbent on any position statewide that we've invited on the show, not a single one has responded, with the exception of one person who was in a different position and is now running for a different seat that is not unopposed. So
really? Okay.
In general, incumbents, they don't want to talk to the people. They don't, I guess they just think they have that ballot favoritism, I guess, from being the incumbent. But I would love to hear from more
that
incumbents.
many of them are scared. I think that many of them are scared because they do the whole campaigning. They're for the people, by the people. They get in there, private interests get into their wallet, and then they're nowhere to be found. And they don't want to answer questions because then they're going to show their true hand.
Right. But accessibility is something that ought to be demanded by the people.
Let me tell you, I got to get on this. So we're talking about these bills being rushed through the legislature. So Brent, I know you don't know like our backstory. I'd love to pick your brain one day as somebody who worked at the Attorney General's office just about, my background is in different criminal cases, researching criminal cases. So I don't, public accountability isn't always a thing that I've been into. That's mostly Whitney's thing. But we have been ongoing investigation into DHR, Alabama DHR. And there is a bill, HB 464, that was sponsored by Representative Kenneth Paschal that I had been kind of working to bring some attention to because if you know all these stories that we had heard from DHR, parents that are affected by DHR from all across the state. And one of the people that I had to reach out to is on the House Judiciary Committee. Okay. And so I was advising people to, we're going to make this a coordinated effort. So let's send an email to the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Well, when you go online to, the state website and you send an email to Mr. Jim Hill, who's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, guess what? His email doesn't work. And when I called the clerk's office and I said, hey, his email's not working, she said, oh, yeah, we know. I normally just tell people to send it to me and then I decide what goes to him. Because if he got emails, public emails, and he would get thousands of emails. That is correct. That is what should be happening is you should be getting thousands of emails from the people that you represent. So needless to say,
job description, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. Needless to say, this bill has yet to be placed on the House Judiciary Committee agenda, but you see bills like all these that are concerning the PSC. Well, guess what? They sure as hell get placed on the agendas, don't they?
That was
Isn't
amazing.
that a coinky dink?
Right. When that first bill that was in the House came up for a public hearing, I had been in Greenville the night before and I changed my plans. I originally had planned to come home that night, which is a long drive, but I decided to spend the night down in Evergreen and come back up. Is that right? No, I'd been in Evergreen and came and stopped in Greenville. That's what it was. But to go to Montgomery and make a statement at this public hearing where they were taking, comments from the public. I was the only candidate for the PSC who was there, but they did something that I had been told rarely happens, which as soon as they finished with that, they voted it out of committee straight to the House. And again, fortunately, it never made its way to the Senate. It got stopped there. No, it's just, it's a different mindset down there. It really is. And when people come home and say, here's who I am or here's what I believe, you now have some way to check it with what they have done in Montgomery. And it's interesting. When I was at the Attorney General's office for a little over, maybe right at 5 years, I prosecuted public corruption and white collar crimes. And I'll tell you this, when you do that in Alabama, you stay busy.
Yeah, trust, we know.
You gotta keep your head on a swivel too.
Gosh, I can already see Whitney showing up in your emails forever after this, knowing that. So that's actually really interesting. But, again, I'm going to say this again for people that are listening. We are not mad enough. We really aren't. We're not just with what's going on with the PSC, but just, statewide about these things that just keep happening. And how do we solve that? Well, we got to get loud, and we don't just get loud for a little period of time and then forget about it. Right. We got to, like I tell Whitney all the time, I'm like, man, I'm about to put my foot on their neck, figuratively, of course, but
I knew that.
I gotta be careful because there ain't no telling what somebody put out there. But I mean, really, we have to stop accepting that these things are happening to us and start holding these people accountable. We really do. I'm gonna have to go take some blood pressure medicine when we get off this phone call, because we were the same way when we had our interview yesterday with our other PSC candidate. Because I'm like, man, these people just don't realize. I can't tell you how many people that we hear from, especially because I told you we've been doing this ongoing investigation into DHR, and then hearing about parents that are criminalized because they are in poverty, right? And they can't get caught up because they're fighting this. They've got these attorneys or whatever, and they can't even afford to pay their regular bills because they're having to pay for all this other stuff. And it affects so many facets of life, and people truly we're just used to it, right? We're like, well, my rate just keeps going
And on
up.
top of it, you have a power bill that you can't even afford. I mean, like the people of Alabama are just like, we are losing at every turn.
Right. And who would have thought? I mean, let's put it this way. If last year somebody would have said that there was going to be a bill introduced in the Alabama legislature that would have taken away your ability to vote on a statewide office, you'd have called them a liar.
Yeah.
You would have said, no, that's never going to happen. And yet it has now at least twice. It's unbelievable that this is going on in Alabama. But people, you're right, people have to get mad. They've got to get mad enough to show up and vote people out of office.
Well, we've talked about this before about how low turnout we have for for primaries in the state of Alabama. And it really can come down to, a couple of hundred of votes to really make a difference. So a lot of people think, you think of voting, you think at like a federal level, oh, my vote isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. But at these state levels, they really make a huge difference. So I would encourage anyone, if you're not registered to vote, first of all, get registered to vote. And then if you are registered, actually get out there and exercise your right to vote. Because you know what? These goons in Montgomery are trying to take away your right to do that for the PSC. So let's turn out and vote, okay?
And one of the things I would, the next time I see my state senator, I would love to ask him, if you thought it was a good idea to appoint the PSC commissioners, why don't you introduce a bill that allows the governor to appoint state senators?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, if that's the perfect way of getting people in Montgomery to represent the individuals of the state, let's just do it that way.
Let's appoint everybody. Screw an election.
I mean, why bother with it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they'd be really on it at that point, right? Because then they'd want their name to be appointed there.
You're stepping on my toes now.
Uh-huh. You're stepping in my pocketbook. I mean, I'll just say it, right? I mean, what other seriously, this is a serious question. This is not a joke when I say this. What other motivation is there? This is a serious question. If we're wanting to appoint people and we're wanting to do all this, what other plausible motivation is there? I'm sorry, they ain't one. It all comes down to money. It has to. There really, truly is no other plausible. You're a prosecutor, Brent. Means, motive, and opportunity.
I was just sitting there thinking, if you're wanting to fight, you're going to have to take a different position on that topic. I can tell you.
Gosh. You know what? When we get, I'm going to hang up and I'm going to go have me a margarita and I don't even drink anymore.
Go back to the
That's,
Waffle House. Go to the Waffle House.
hey,
I got to tell you, I used to teach for 3 years. I taught trial at Faulkner in Montgomery. I was an adjunct, but one of the things that I told my students, I love trial work. I mean, I love it. One of the things I told my students is after you have developed what you think is your closing argument, go to the Waffle House, sit down at the counter, turn to the guy next to you and say, I'll buy your meal if I can tell you a story. And if he agrees, you tell him, you do your closing argument, tell him your closing argument. And if he gets it at the end of your presentation, then you've got a good closing argument. I mean, Waffle House is a great place to bounce stuff off people.
if you only knew the backstory
Our
behind
story
Waffle
with
House.
Walmart. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you this real quick, Brent. Okay.
Okay.
And I want to talk about this so like people know. Okay. Because we've been talking about heavy stuff, but like maybe this will make you laugh a little bit. So years ago, I started looking into a case. I was just a little amateur podcaster. Okay. And I started looking into a case of a guy in Coosa County who claimed that he had been wrongfully convicted of murder and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Well, during the course of when I say it's an investigation, like I truly mean it was. I got the trial transcripts. I talked to witnesses, jurors, prosecutors, law enforcement agents. I mean, I really, really did my due diligence on this. Okay.
On there.
Yeah. So I found out that I found like a little piece of paper that had been kind of tucked away and like it wasn't really important. Okay. But it was from a police chief in Rockford because this case had actually been turned over to the ABI, right? So Rockford police chief had just done like a simple little report. And in that report, it said, we left the scene in the middle of collecting evidence. We left the scene and we went to eat at Waffle House where we were met with a deputy from Chilton County. This is Coosa County. So, right at the state line, there's a Waffle House there on Highway 22. And so they sit and they're talking. Okay. Well, they get to talking and they come up with the suspect of this guy who kind of lived closely. And it really would be a coincidence for you to learn that this person ultimately was arrested and convicted of this crime. Okay. It would really have to take an act of God for this to happen. So Waffle House was kind of already in my mirror, right? Well, fast forward, I graduate from college. The keynote speaker at my college graduation is Bert Thornton, who's the CEO Emeritus of Waffle House. Okay. Fast forward again. I've created Murder Creek Media. I have this huge volunteer team of people that work to investigate cases, unsolved homicides, missing persons, cases of potential wrongful conviction. And we cover a case out of Mobile of a woman that had been murdered whose case was unsolved. She died in 1981. And guess where the last place that she was seen alive?
Waffle House.
If you guess Waffle House, you sure would be correct. All right, fast forward again.
That's amazing.
No, it gets better, okay? It really gets better. So fast forward again to just a couple months ago. I think this is like November, maybe. Whitney and I go meet in person for the first time. We're at Waffle House, and Whitney had just lost her job. I lost my regular job through no fault of our own, by the way, okay?
Yeah, but both at the same time, we're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, we're like, what are we going to do? And the
Go to
whole
Waffle
DHR
House.
Well, right. But the whole DHR story had kind of come across our radar. And we were like,
I've been investigating DHR and I wanted
Yes.
Neely's help. Yeah.
She wanted my help, right? And so I was like, well, I don't know, because that kind of puts me in the line of fire, whatever. Well, anyway, I had a little recorder sitting right there on the table because sometimes I'll record my in-person meetings to, transcribe notes so I don't forget because I have so many meetings. And the waitress comes up to us and she's trying to be real quiet. And I said, oh, you don't have to be quiet. This is just for our personal notes. And she said, what do you guys do? And we kind of laughed at each other. And I looked at her and I said, oh, we're investigative reporters. And she said, well, let me tell you what you need to investigate is Alabama DHR. And sure enough, this woman had a child who had died in the custody of Alabama DHR. And it was just further like
we said, we're like, actually, that's what we're here for. And the tears instantly came down from her. So Waffle House is something weird there.
I'm telling you, I'm very, I believe that God gives us signs, okay? And God has given me a sign that Waffle House has something to do with this. So it's funny because like I promote Waffle House. We like to eat there. I'll go take my laptop and I'll work there a lot. But there's something going on with Waffle House. So every time you see a Waffle House now, Brent, you're going to think
I'll think about Neely and Whitney.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about my closing arguments.
But yeah, it's just an interesting story, and to see how we've gotten to where we've gotten, I guess, or at least Murder Creek Media has gotten to where we've gotten because there's been such an influence in Waffle House. I mean, even when I did the created the branding, it was loosely based on,
Waffle House
1980s, early
font and
90s
yeah.
Waffle House. Yeah, I mean, it really is integral to Murder Creek Media, okay, and like what we stand for. But you're absolutely right when you talk about, hey, go to Waffle House and talk to somebody. Where are you going to get the truth out of someone, right? Where are you going to get the whole story? You're going to have time. You can go there any time of day, and you're going to sit down. You're going to talk to somebody. That
Right.
place is Waffle House.
And you will
For
get
the
the
record,
truth. Yeah, I'm sorry.
yes, this episode is not sponsored by Waffle House. So let me just put that out there. They are not. But you know what? If you want to be, holler at your girl.
But it should be sponsored by Waffle House. But
That's right.
you will get the truth from people at Waffle House. I mean,
Yeah.
they will tell you maybe not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
That's right. And sometimes we need to hear that. And you know what people at the PSC need to hear right now is we are tired of this. I said something yesterday in our interview. There was a meme. I can't think of this guy's name, but he's got his fist in the air and he's like, these rates are too damn high. And it was like this joke. It was like 10 years ago, but I said, we're literally living in that meme right now, right? Like it's too high. We're struggling. People across Alabama are struggling. And it's really a bipartisan issue. It really is. Like we're talking about, Republicans and Democrats. This is a bipartisan issue. It affects everyone. And we need to hold these people accountable. We really do.
Yes, ma'am. Without
I
a
really
doubt.
am going to have a waffle. I did have some chocolate pie this morning, Brent, when we went and met at Waffle House. I've never had chocolate pie from Waffle House, but I'm probably going to have to go get another piece after this because I am just.
I was going to ask, was it good?
It was
Yes.
delicious. It was delicious.
Yes, it really
How's it
was.
right next to the hash browns? The hash browns are what I like.
Well, I ordered
We
hash browns.
had
Didn't
those
need
too.
it. Have you ever had the Waffle House sauce?
No, man.
Did you know they have their own sauce?
I didn't know
We
that.
tried it for the first time today. We didn't know either.
Not on the chocolate pie, I hope.
No. I had it on a grilled chicken sandwich with some grilled onions and mushrooms, lettuce and tomato, and the Waffle House sauce. It can't be beat. It really can't.
Yeah. So Brent, we're gonna need you to get elected and get in there and get this whole thing under control because Waffle House will soon be out of my budget if my power bill doesn't go down.
Well, there's a great Waffle House downtown Montgomery. Maybe that's where we can start having meetings or something.
That's
Hey,
right.
listen, we are always open to it. I mean, we have you on here to talk about this, but if you make it past the primaries and stuff, we'd definitely like to have you. Even if you don't make it in, right? We'd still like to have you. I'd love to pick your brain about that case I told you about in Coosa County, because that's actually found some evidence in that case, and it's currently going through appeal in the Coosa County Court of Criminal Appeals. So there's a lot with that case that's very interesting, and I would love to hear your perspective on it from
That'd be
having
great.
worked at the state level and dealing with public corruption, because that's I don't want to give too much into it, but there is a little bit of that involved.
Well, I keep up with, try as best I can to keep up with the decisions that the appellate courts in Alabama make. And so I would love to find out at least the name of that case. So when it comes out, I can read it and see what the issues were and how they were decided.
Well, it was just I went the other week to see there was Steve Marshall had filed a 214-page response to the original Rule 32 motion that went in. So we'll see how it goes. We're currently waiting to see if the judge is going to grant an evidentiary hearing, and I really hope he does, because I've seen cases overturned on far less evidence than what has been submitted in this case. It's really interesting.
Right.
We'll have a whole episode about that, though. You'll have to watch it.
On my tongue, when you mention Rockford, every time I think of Rockford, I think that is the smallest county seat in the state of Alabama. That's a neat.
It is, isn't it?
It certainly is. But that is a really neat little town right there.
It is. I was talking about it earlier because there's one flashing yellow light in Rockford. That's it. I mean, there's not like a Walmart or anything like that. It's just like truly backwoods country Alabama part, And
there's not even a Waffle House there.
No, you got to go to Chilton County, right? You got to go to off Highway 22 in Chilton County. Why do you think they were there? I'm going to go eat there just so I can see and reminisce. But no, seriously though, we'd love to talk to you about that. I know you're busy today, but some other time I'd love to talk to you about it and kind of tell you what we found in that. See, pick your brain and hear your thoughts on it.
Right, that'd be great. Because I've had a case or two that's come to mind during our conversation this afternoon that I'd love to bounce off y'all that One in particular involves DHR that I think you would say, you're kidding me.
I wonder if we've seen it before.
I was about to say, nothing surprises us at this point. I'll be very
Yes,
honest with
yeah.
And that's sad. I mean, it really is. But
Mhm.
there is a point where you say, give me a break. This ought to be shocking, but it's not.
It ought to be, and it's not. And people, you hear it and you think, oh, well, these are just some crazy podcasters talking about it. You know, people talk to me a lot of times like they call me a podcaster like it's an insult or something. And I'm like, yeah, but if you saw the evidence that we have, which, you know, when we do an episode, we will put a blog post up and we link to all the resources. So the things that we talk about in our episodes, we put verified links to those things in there, like different news articles and, you know, copies of the bills and things like that. So anything that we've talked about here, you can go to our website and you can see everything that we're talking about, but you'd be surprised at how many people use it as an insult. And I'm like, okay, it really shouldn't matter who it's coming from, because the information that we're telling you is accurate and somebody needs to be held accountable for it. And it shouldn't matter if it's little old me talking about it or if it's the governor. It really shouldn't matter. Somebody should be held accountable for these things.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
Well,
we've covered a lot here today.
yeah. And you know what? We forgot to ask our last candidate, but I want to ask you, Brent, if somebody is watching this episode and they remember one thing about you, what do you want it to be?
I want it to be that I am the person who needs to be the next commissioner at the Public Service Commission, place 2 position. That's it. We've got
Hey, that's fair, straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, we have to have 2 new commissioners this time. We've got to get on the phone with our state, and I'm just going to say state representatives now, because I'm concerned about while we've been talking, the Senate may have voted this thing on through.
I'm telling you, it's like I can't watch it close enough. It makes me sad.
It's incredible how fast they're running this thing. But if we don't lose our ability to vote and we don't have 4 new commissioners appointed by the governor to negate whatever the newly elected commissioners want to do, we've got to fight. We've got to fight and don't stop.
Yeah.
That's right.
But thank y'all again for having me on. This has been a blast.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about going to the Waffle House now, I'll tell you.
You should.
Tell them I sent you, okay?
Tell them they need to sponsor the program for you, right?
That's right. Hey, I'm working on it, okay?
I hope that you have a good, primaries are so close. I think I looked at, oh God, how many days? How many days?
49, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Who's counting, right?
I was with the Limestone or Athens Limestone Republican women last night, and I think I heard the number 50. So I'm thinking that now we're down to 49. Yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
I'm running for the local school board down here.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a lot of corruption here in Baldwin County in the school system, and I ain't having it anymore. So
my first year at the Attorney General's office, I was an assistant. Actually, at the time, I was a deputy AG. I didn't have merit system protection, but they had me down in the southern part of the state. And my wife and I actually lived in Spanish Fort for a little over a year. It's a great place we weren't far from Stockton, of course.
No, you weren't. Yeah.
Big hullabaloo. And I know a lot of the controversies coming out of Mobile just because of how that works. But Baldwin County was a great place to live. I guess I'm sure it still is.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but there's a lot of things down here that, just aren't going the way they should be. But
unfortunately, Brent, everyone wants to live here now. Like, not just people in Alabama, but the whole world feels like they want to come live over in Baldwin County. So it's we're navigating, traffic woes and massive building.
The growth is just unreal, and it's being mismanaged. We don't have the infrastructure to keep up with it. And it's ruining the community. It's ruining, our ecosystems and our land. But anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and feel free to come back anytime, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Make It Make Sense, Alabama is brought to you by Murder Creek Media. If you've never heard of us and want to check out some of our other projects, including our investigative true crime series, visit murdercreekmedia.com to learn more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all soon.